Hello. Good morning. It's lovely to see so many people here. It's such a lovely day. And welcome. Thank you for coming to our panel and our conversation today with an extremely high-powered bunch of people, lots of women and Lee, of course, who's heading the various public film funds of the UK. And we're going to be talking today about how the decisions they make shape a lot of the films that are made in the UK today. I'm Louise Tutt. I'm a journalist. I'm the deputy editor of Screen International and Screen Daily. For the benefit of anybody visually impaired in the audience, I am a white woman with shortish brown hair. I'm wearing a black skirt with an orange and pink top. And I will, when our speakers first introduce themselves as well, they'll give a brief description too. So let me introduce you to the panel. I'll give a very brief overview of the funds they oversee, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty and the nuance of how they actually make those decisions and celebrating, managing, supporting bold visions with managing risk and how they assess the cultural impact of the films they make. And hopefully it will be very helpful to everybody in the audience here today. And we'll have time for some questions afterwards as well. So you will get a chance to ask our panelists anything you would like as well. So first of all, we have Mia Bays, who's director of the BFI National Lottery Filmmaking Fund, who I'm sure you may know. She oversees the development fund, also a discovery fund, which supports funding for debut directors and provides up to £1 million to films with a budget of up to £3.5 million. And the newly named Impact Fund for more experienced directors or debut filmmakers with projects budgeted above £3.5 million and awards up to 1.25. Please jump in if any of this is not right. And the BFI has 3 films that it has supported in the film festival selection this year. It's Andrea Arnold's Bird in competition, Sandia Suri's Santosh in a certain regard, and Karen Kandari's Sister Midnight, which is screening tonight, I think, in Directors Fortnight. And then next to her is Isabel Davis, Executive Director, Screen Scotland, who has 3 main funds, a film development and production fund of £4 million. That's the total amount you have.
The total amount.
Production growth fund of £2 million and a broadcast content fund of £3.5 million. And supports lots of really great, interesting films coming up, including John McClane's Volcano.
Tornado. Have they changed the title?
Oh, no, Tornado, sorry.
That's a sequel.
One of the natural disasters. Sorry, I've been here a week. Next to Isabel is Ursula Devine. She's a development executive at Northern Ireland Screen. She has development funding from just over £2,000 for an individual and £40,000 for a company for a single project. And for production funding, she's backed, Northern Ireland Screen has backed films including, I'm sure you may have heard of this one, Rich Pepiat's Kneecap, which is going to be a sensation, I think, later this year. Next to Ursula is Shanida Scotland, who is co-director and global head of film at Doc Society. She provides support of up to a maximum of £150,000 per feature for documentary films or immersive non-fiction projects. And they fund in stages and up to sort of £50,000 to £80,000 for production funding. And they've backed so many great feature documentaries, including Nothing Compares, Bunch of Amateurs, Tish, the ones that I'm sure that you have seen and have heard of. Next to Shanida is Lee Waters, Chief Executive of Film Cymru Wales, and Film Cymru can award a maximum of a maximum of £600,000 with awards in the £150,000 to £4,000 range. They would ordinarily expect their investment not to exceed 50% of the budget. And they had a great film in Grade 8 at the beginning of the festival, Brides, which is directed by Nadia Fall and is produced by Yeah, who are the Welsh company on that. Next to Lee, hi, is
You're doing very well.
Denitsa Yordanova. She's head of the UK Global Screen Fund and International Funds, which is an exciting new development in our sector. She has £7 million a year to boost international development, production, distribution, and promotion opportunities for the UK's independent screen sector. And I think the co-production fund has supported Ariane Lebed's September Says, which is screening here in certain regard.
Tuesday.
So this is our panel, so you know them, you know me. So I'd like to get a sense of who you all are so we can get a mix of who directors, producers, writers, where you come from. So would you mind raising your hand if you're a director? Okay, lots of directors. A producer? Lots of producers. Writers? Any writers? Yeah. And are you from the UK mostly? Any international people here? Okay, great. Well, welcome. It's lovely to see you all. And first of all, I'm going to go to Mia, who will also describe herself, what we said before. Mia, you said recently, a cautious marketplace means our role is more important than ever. Can you talk about what you mean by that?
So hello, I am an Anglo-Spanish white woman in my early menopausal 50s, which doesn't necessarily show, but occasionally it does. And I have my signature hat on. And turning to risk, sorry, can you just repeat that?
You were talking about how a cautious marketplace means
market.
the role of the BFI is more important than ever.
Yeah, because we've very clearly demarcate between supporting new talent, emerging talent across debuts and our Discovery Fund, and Impact, which is a commitment to people who are further into their career. Across both, it's often risk taking in the sense of form. Like Bird is something we supported by Andrea Arnold, where she's really, pardon the pun, taking flight and spreading her wings. She's never worked with visual effects before. That feels like an incredibly important space for us to be, and they couldn't raise all the money from the market. So it's about market failure, which is not a particularly sunny term, but that is where we need to be. So often debuts are seen as too risky for the market. They may be market friendly, but they may not be ready to invest at the beginning. So that's what I mean by that. And our role is just more important than ever, because it's just so much harder to find all of the money. And we'll get into it. We work with the broadcasters, we work with everybody here except Denitsa, because her and I can't work together.
And Shanida, I can't work with Shanida either. So yes. Everybody else.
But basically, we don't always back films that have a broadcaster attached, for instance. And again, those films are fragile. So and therefore, national and regional funds and co-productions are really important. So that's sort of what I mean by that.
Coming to Isabel, can you talk a little bit about how you at Screen Scotland balance creativity and risk, and also a little bit about where your money comes from, because where the money comes from depends how it behaves, what you can do with it, what you want to do with it.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm also a middle-aged white woman wearing a sort of yellowish top. It's not very well ironed, please don't judge me, and some plain trousers. So we have two funds that would be relevant for film. So Louise mentioned the Film Development and Production Fund, which is lottery. So I guess it behaves quite a lot like the BFI money in the sense that it is equity. We respect a producer corridor within our equity, but we also have a production growth fund, which comes from the Scottish Government, and it is a grant. It is non-recoupable. I would say that anyone who's here in this room in Cannes who's looking to make an independent film isn't going to have access to our production growth fund. It is an incentive fund to encourage high-budget, returnable TV series into Scotland. So it's worth knowing about, but it's unlikely to come your way. To be perfectly honest, I guess probably there is something about the lottery that says it has to sort of behave in ways that create public value. Of course, there's lots of public value in funding a high-end TV series, but the reason why we have the grant funding is to incentivize production that wouldn't otherwise come to Scotland, and incentivize people to use people, goods and services who are resident in Scotland. So back to the Film Fund, the question is, Louise, why do we fund it? How do we balance creativity and risk? I mean, everything is a risk. The UK has just had a bit of, everyone's breathed a sigh of relief and a sigh of happy surprise, I think, that the British government has chosen this moment to take the tax credit from 25% to 40%. And that's going to go some way to dealing with that major risk point, which is the fact that it is almost impossible in this market, and I would say even for a commercial film that is even elevated genre with a director who's proven themselves, that has cast, that has a solid sales agent, we've certainly seen work that we find to be of real merit where there is a need for us to step in, because there is simply no way of raising the money from the market that can balance the budget that the film has to be made for. So that gap has just closed by another 15%, which is fantastic news, and it's busted a lot of independent films out of development jail or financing jail, I would say. So that's great. In terms of the sort of bigger point about as a funder and how we balance creativity and risk, I mean, I guess people think of this as maybe a luxurious place for the public funds to sit, but of course we would encourage the most creatively risky version of the film, because I think that if not, there is no safe version of an independent film. There is no safe kind of easy, mitigated, well, it's a genre. So none of that works. Of course you need clarity of proposition by way of your story, but I think if you aren't prepared as a filmmaker to take it out of the branch as far as you possibly can and declare yourself as a director, the audience isn't going to be that interested anyway, because they can get all their thrills and spills from higher budget work that can come directly into their TV screen. So what is it that's going to get them out to the theatrical marketplace? I would say it's got to be something that is something they've never seen before, and that comes with an element of risk. So I guess that's the kind of risk we'll absolutely support. I'm banging on a bit. You've got an awful lot of people on this panel, Louise. What I would say is that in Scotland, our film fund also works for documentaries. So unlike the BFI, we're just one fund, so we do and can and do work with Shanida. And in fact, Danny Carlaw, who heads up Unscripted, is in the audience if you want to see her afterwards. Is that right?
Thank you. Ursula, can you talk a little bit about how you work in Northern Ireland and your creativity risk ratio?
Yeah, hello, everyone. My name's Ursula. I've got short hair, wearing a patterned dress, and I'm sitting in the middle. Yeah, I mean, for us, independent film is hugely important for developing local talent, and it's kind of the ground floor for avenues into TV and large scale. So we've been growing immensely the last lot of years. Usually we do 4 independent films a year, aside from the documentary and factual entertainment, TV, animation, interactive. We do all of that. But last year we did 12 scripted features on top of the documentary, and 3 of those were new talent. Actually 4, including Kneecap. That was Rich's first feature as well. We fully finance 1 first feature a year, which is hugely important, and we're really seeing the benefits of that. One example of that is Bad Day for the Cut, Brendan Mullen and Chris Baugh's first feature. It went to Sundance. They got a deal with Legendary. Chris, who was a writer-director on it, did an episode of Fira. Then he did Tin Star. Then he did his passion project, the second feature, which is what he really wanted to do. And now he's just done 2 seasons of Rec, and him and Brendan are about to do In Flight, a Channel 4 series. So that first feature was hugely important to all that followed. It also raised the profile of their DP, who went on to do several features and TV. And we also used the first feature as a stepping up for crew. So it's hugely important. It's a first feature for writer, director, and producer. And sometimes we have an experienced exec producer. That used to have to be an exec producer from London or Dublin, and now it doesn't. We have grown it so much that we can do all of that at home. So independent, that kind of formula has been massive. Louise Gallagher, who did A Bump Along the Way as producer, is now development producer for Hat Trick. And she also is the creator of Blue Lights, which is in it's about to go into 3rd season. So it's just the trajectory for writer, director, and producer through independent film is massive, and it's great that we can kind of cross-pollinate with film and TV, and people can come back and forward. And we also work with all the funds, and it's nice on the island of Ireland that people have the 2 tax credits, the 2 funds, and there's other resources. And Kneecap we did with the BFI and Screen Ireland.
You're in the sweet spot, really, aren't you, in Northern Ireland? It's the place to be.
It's a good time. It's a good time.
Shanida, please talk to us a little bit about documentaries. I expect there are some documentary filmmakers in the audience.
Yeah, documentaries are great. That's why we're all here. but that's true too. So Doc Society is an organisation that's 19 years old. We're 20th birthday next year. We are the BFI's delegate partner for documentary film, and so we support, it's been said, but we support documentary filmmakers, film teams across the UK, funding feature documentaries and short documentaries and non-fiction immersive work too. And in terms of the sort of creative risk or risk taking in documentary, creative risk is why we get out of bed in the morning. We're looking for really ambitious, boundary pushing work that will really develop the documentary form, whether that be short film or feature work. And as Mia has said, across the BFI Filmmaking Fund, we are really committed to supporting emerging talent. So that might range from somebody who's moving very newly into documentary, but also somebody who's a little bit more established, but really pushing their form of working, their practice. So that's the sort of documentary work that we do, but the crucial aspect amongst all of that is that it's for theatrical, cinematic documentary film. We work with a range of partners, as you can see here. Some of the other partners that we work with in terms of the distribution of those films will be broadcasters, for example, streamers. But the primary sort of focus, if you like, the elevation of the work that we're looking for is that that speaks to theatrical audiences.
Thank you. Lee, how does it work in Wales with you?
Okay, morning everyone. I'm Lee Walters. I am a white, some would say bald man. I'm probably going to have to say I'm middle-aged. I've got a navy shirt, navy trousers, and some fetching Nike Air Maxes, if those are in camera. So let me talk about the work we do in Wales. So a little bit like Scotland, Northern Ireland, we have funding from the lottery, which is revenue funding. And also, as a result of our relationship with Welsh Government and Creative Wales, we also have grant funding that we're able to give out. This has been a big, big change for us in Wales in the last sort of 2 years. It now means that we can give out a maximum of 600,000 to feature films, made up of sort of 200,000 lottery equity, 400,000 in grant funding from Welsh Government. And as a result, naturally, we've seen a huge amount of increased interest in the fund that we do, the work that we do, and, you know, much more people connecting with us, and also really understanding the amount of work and support our team do with Welsh-based or born writers, directors, producers. You know, the continuous professional development is so important as part of what we do, and I can't see the team, but they deserve all the credit for that. You know, we were talking last night, on becoming a guinea fowl, when Garno Naoni did a short film called I'm Not a Witch with us back in sort of 2016-17. That went on to be a feature film, I'm Not a Witch. And, you know, now you're seeing a big film in Cannes. Everyone's gone to see it. It's like, it's so powerful. What a great film. So all that kind of work takes time. And I think going back to that, you know, discussion about risk, being able to take those risks at the very start of people's careers, working on them with a short film is just, you know, allows us to kind of build that relationship, build that sort of element of trust, if you like. And then, you know, I would also just kind of mention the Welsh language film fund that we've launched in the last year called Cinema Cymru, whereby we are working in partnership again with Welsh Government and Welsh language television broadcaster S4C, with the aim of doing one Welsh language film a year for theatrical release. Budgets for that would be around the £2 million level, so, you know, not a small amount of money. We've currently got 4 productions in development, and again, you know, working with partners at Creative Wales, we've put in place a really rigorous CPD program for the writers working on it, for the producers, for the directors. So, you know, we're really confident of, you know, seeing the results of that in the coming years. Obviously, no pressure by Kneecap. And obviously, Ireland with A Quiet Girl, putting pressure on us to make sure that we get an Indigenous language film kind of really landing. So yeah, that's kind of where we are at the moment.
Thanks, Lee. And Denitsa, the UK Global Screen Fund works a little bit differently, so over to you.
Thank you. Very nice to be here. I am Denitsa. I'm head of the UK Global Screen Fund and BFI's international funds. I am a woman of Eastern European descent, hence the accent, with dark hair, light eyes, and I have perfectly matched my Screen UK industry mic with a green dress, which check. Finally, color coordination, very important. So our fund is the new kid on the block, and we work in a slightly different way. I think it's very important to explain the source of the funding. For us, it is exclusively grant and aid. Unlike the BFI Filmmaking Fund and Doc Society, who are primarily funded from National Lottery with a good cause mission, our mission is defined in terms of international potential for the films that we support in a co-production strand, and that's focused on minority co-productions for feature film. We also support TV projects in the genres of documentary and animation for majority or minority co-productions with the UK, but also across our other funding programs, which are distribution support for finished films and support for companies across the screen sector for business development strategies that are international in focus. So the word international is very key. That is also how we assess our projects. So we have a 6 criteria assessment table that international potential is the #1 criteria across all the schemes, and it informs also the decisions that we make and the type of projects we support. And very much we're trying to provide a source of funding that's complementary to the existing other funds. So that's why we are not allowed to co-fund with BFI Filmmaking Fund or Doc Society for the same type of activity. For example, for production funding, you have to pick which fund to go to, but we are able to layer in some development lockbox into our projects. We very much are allowed to co-fund with Screen Scotland, Film Cymru Wales, Northern Ireland Screen, and that's actually a positive in our assessment as well. In terms of how we manage risk, I think risk management is built into the design of our fund in terms of the expectations of Treasury for the grant and aid funding, which is a non-recoupable grant. And that comes with focusing on a stage of development which is relatively more advanced. So for our production funding, we can only fund production and not development. So that means a level of risk is managed already to a certain extent. We also fund projects that are 60% financed of the overall budget. So that's an eligibility criteria. And we take the market assessment of risk. So we don't provide notes. We are not an editorial partner. We trust the market forces. And that makes us, I think, a little bit different in our approach, but hopefully complementary. It does not signify that we only back very established filmmakers, however. So there is a distinction in that. For example, some example that might help understand this is we have backed feature debuts. Filmmakers, for example, there's Chris Andrews with Grade 8 Selection Bring Them Down, which is on that far end of the wall. Also, the film that we have in Uncertain Regard section, which is September Says, is a directorial debut of actress Ariane Labed. And last year's Cannes selection, which we backed, a wonderful film called The Settlers, is a 9-party co-production with Chile and Argentina leading, UK, France. I forget the territory, so I'll stop there. But it was a feature debut of Felipe Galvez and very much an international collaboration. So we will back feature debuts if there's a track record of shorts and if the team that's supporting on the producer side is experienced enough in co-production to provide that support to the director and to make sure that their development, well-being and experience in that project is to a certain degree safeguarded, because the support that we provide is primarily financial. So we are not able to come in and assist as much as the other funds do in the development of the project. Probably it's end there because I'm aware all of us took a long time in our answers and we want to have some time for questions.
It's all gold. Which brings me on to the international impact of the films you all and the talent you all support. How important is that to you? And I'll go to Isabel because she has a very international sort of tinge slate.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm looking at Saoirse Ronan in The Outrun, which is a poster at the back of the room, which is a film that we're very proud to have been involved with the Berlin-based director Nora Fingscheidt. And I suppose that, in a way, is is emblematic, but look, it's every film is judged on its own merit. Just to go back to that film for a second, it premiered at Sundance. Nora is from Berlin. There are a couple of German funds in that production. The writer of the screenplay is also the writer of the novel that it comes from. It was very much a creative collaboration between Amy Littrott from Scotland and Nora, all set in Scotland. It has to be said, in Orkney. Highly recommend the film. It's beautiful. It had its world premiere at Sundance and then its European premiere at Berlin earlier this year, and it's going to be at Edinburgh Film Festival later this year. So look, we will do quite a lot of international co-productions. It's fair to say that Scotland is a very pro-European country, and sitting as it does quite far away from London, Scottish producers, Scottish filmmakers see themselves very much as part of Europe. I think they would have stayed there if their votes accounted for anything. And of course, they feel very much part of the Nordic countries as well as part of other European countries. So we're very, very supportive of that as a structure. And I think it's fair to say we've been I don't think we've actually. I'm just knowing we've got things with you, but have we actually?
Yes. We have several projects.
Several projects, exactly.
Including an Indian co-production. Also
right, very good, yes. So that is definitely a way in which we can work together and do work together, but we're also perfectly happy to do local films as well. I guess the point I would make is that we've just launched a strategy and we have 3 touchstones or North Stars or whatever you want to call them. Creative origination is sort of number 1 for us, and so doubling down on that local generated IP or content so that the local producer is really not just in the driving seat. We absolutely expect to see collaborations internationally, but we would like to sort of tack towards more of those projects because we have been, I would say, very, very sort of generous and friendly co-producers, and that's great. That will continue, but we're very keen to see local producers in the mix as well, and that including where they're not working with local directors. Even, you know, we will support our producing talent to a very high degree.
Lee, is it similar in Wales? What's your international strategy there?
Yes, so I think similar to Scotland, you know, Wales does feel a long way from London a lot of the time, and we're constantly looking for partners to work with. About 30% of the features that we fund have international co-producers attached. You know, the film Brides, which is one of the Great 8 this year with Yeah Productions. I mean, they're currently working on an Anglo-Indian rom-com called Chennai Story. And, you know, what we're really keen to do is kind of find ways for producers to link up with, you know, international co-funders, and whatever we could do around that. I mean, where we're very lucky in Wales is that obviously we work very closely with Creative Wales, who do a lot of kind of international work on behalf of Wales, invite us, bring us along, and anything that we can do really that gets the name of Wales out there as a destination for film is hugely important to us. So for us, we're already at a good level with 30% of the films being funded, co-funded, but we want to do more, and that's something that we will do in the coming years.
Ursula, because, as you say, you're on the island of Ireland, so you co-produce regularly with Ireland and also with the mainland UK. Are there other European co-producers with whom Northern Irish producers are encouraged to work? How important is the international potential?
In terms of co-production, that's not a massive priority to us. It's more about our films going out. For a long time, it has been, I suppose, films coming to shoot in Northern Ireland, and for us right now, Indigenous film, having a platform on the international market is what's important. So we try to exhaust all of the Indigenous opportunities before we look at incoming film. But we do look at incoming TV productions and large-scale production. I suppose the goal is that through the conveyor belt of short film, and small independent film to grow, to eventually have our own writers and directors and producers on the large scale. But we do absolutely do co-productions with Italy. We have a TV co-production with Luxembourg that's coming up. So I mean, and with Canada, you know, so we do those co-productions, but we don't have a separate co-production fund. We just have on an independent. It's all about the spend in NI when we're looking at incoming films. So it's more about our reach in the market and reaching international audience. That's our priority. We don't do anything that doesn't have market attachment except the first features. That's the calling card. That's what we want to kind of help. Here's the talent. Let's get them on the commercial things. Luckily, the first features are having commercial impact as well, but it's the only thing that we do that doesn't have the main focus as international impact.
Mia, do any of the funds that you oversee have any international potential built into them? Is it a requirement of any of the films and talent that you're supporting that they have an international life there?
Well, I mean, it's a big emphasis for us when we're analysing projects. I mean, there's international is inbuilt in terms of the stories that lots of British filmmakers want to tell, because there are lots of second and third generation diasporic stories. So the two films that we've got here, UK Indian co-productions, they're both British directors who are telling stories on the Indian subcontinent. And we just shot one film in Nigeria. There's another one coming later this year. So we're not being bound by English language, even, because it's about what are the most interesting stories that are filling a gap, perhaps, that are automatically internationalizing. And then also we put a big emphasis on international. Where's Vicky? Vicky Brown is waving now, who's our sales and distribution senior exec, and leads on ensuring that our films make as big an impact at home and internationally as possible. With Impact Fund, which is second features and beyond, or £3.5 million and above debuts, you do have to have a sales agent attached. So you do need to evidence that there is some market interest and potential. You don't for discovery. And it's a mixed bag. It's really hard to sell films. It always has been. It's really hard at the moment. And so that's why we really hand carry films as much as we can. Sometimes it's a film that is very much about domestic relevance, and the zeitgeist may be much more specific to the domestic audience and not have international appeal, and that's okay. And in other instances, it's the reverse.
Shanida, is it the same with you with documentaries? Are they international is important to you too?
It's incredibly important, and I don't want to repeat what Mia has said, but it's very similar in the sense in how we think about them. Documentaries are international, I think, by default. It's a smaller community, but also, as Mia said, we are British doesn't necessarily confine to the sort of the land space, as it were. There is a diasporic legacy there. There is a diasporic voice there that needs to react to the Britain, the UK that we are today, right, and do so in a creative way. So we're firm and I'm incredibly firm on supporting those stories. I think for documentary film, we work with a range of international partners, whether they be distribution, broadcast, oftentimes they're international co-productions as well. And so we don't exclude it. It's something that's absolutely brilliant when it happens. It's not a requirement either, though. But that's the nature of the theatrical documentary film that we're working with and supporting. And I think the other thing I want to say is that it takes a village to make a documentary film. And I think that's an incredibly important thing. I think if you start from that basis, you realise everybody is a potential collaborator, ally, friend to your film, to filmmakers, the producers, everybody it takes to raise this thing into being. And so that village absolutely is domestic, all of these wonderful people here that we work with, but it's international. We're all advising, we're all creating a community for the film teams that we work with globally.
We mentioned a little bit earlier about the new independent tax credit, the 40%, and although this isn't a panel specifically about that, I thought it'd be interesting to talk a little bit about if suddenly your inboxes are, suddenly a lot fuller, and how you would advise filmmakers to work with that credit. What's changed? What does that credit change for the fund you're running and the projects that are applying to you? Mia might be talked out on this, so shall I? I'll go to you as well.
I'll have a go. I mean, it certainly has, as I said earlier, I mean, I think it has certainly lifted the spirits of a lot of independent producers. The sense I get from most independent producers, and certainly the way we're seeing this, is like, oh, thank goodness, you know, it's filled a gap, but it's not suddenly the panacea that's going to see, you know, thousands and thousands upon films to be made. And of course, there are other resources that are scarce. I guess the big disruptive factor, as I guess it was post-pandemic, is cast, because, you know, as it's been reported, I think in Screen just last week, you know, the pressure on projects that are looking to international sales in particular to cast their films in a world where that cast suddenly, the world might look quite different from them if other films are coming along, and how in any case does an independent hold on to that. That's still quite a big sort of, I guess, risk point for a film. Again, maybe it's not necessarily the public funders who are calling for that sort of named cast. In fact, we're thrilled when there's somebody new who breaks through in a film that we're involved with. But in the end, you know, you're talking about an incredible pressure on that moment of financial closing in inter-party films, not just, and especially if you have a cast window. I guess that's the point I'm trying to make, is that, you know, people are accelerating their way towards closing, and at the same time, perhaps the film isn't ready. There are other things that aren't ready. The elements aren't coming together as quickly as, let's say, the cast is, and suddenly you're on this kind of fast-moving train. It would be nice if it slows things down a little bit and we can just get back to reality a bit more. I guess the other thing is, as Screen Scotland, our stated maximum award for any project is about £500,000. I guess, Danny, it's unlikely we'd do that for a documentary, but it's still quite significant. During the sort of post-pandemic, we would have to step up beyond that, and then frankly, because the market was so impossible, we've had to step beyond our comfort zone a few times, and I think perhaps we won't do that unless we absolutely have to, now that there is a tax credit that can step in.
Lee, have you noticed an immediate uptick in applicants, and what do they need to know?
You know, I think first thing to say, I mean, it's really positive news for everybody, and, you know, real credit to the BFI and PACT for the kind of lobbying that's, you know, resulted in this. I think where it's potentially going to help is those kind of productions that we're currently working with who are just quite squeezed on getting that final bit of finance in play. I think it could be really valuable for that. So in terms of, you know, new kind of inquiries, not really, but the ones that we've currently got going, it's clearly been a real boost to them. I mean, I guess I have a little bit of concern when I walk around and I see everyone else that it's almost like a bit of a Cold War, where it's like, so we've got this tax credit, so there's offers now from other countries to be competitive. So, you know, always we're going to need sales agents, always we're going to need private financiers to step in as well. But, you know, absolutely real positive thing for the industry in the UK. And, you know, our job in Wales now is really to figure out what, you know, what else we can do to help support that and support filmmakers to make the best use of that. So.
Thank you. Talking of filmmakers, I'd like to open it up. I'm sure there's some questions. I think we've got a couple of microphones, which we need to wait for because we're recording it. So.
Hello. Questions to Mia, really, because she mentioned Baby all at once. You're saying that films are harder to sell. I'm wondering, is it just British films harder to sell? Is it more the industry itself changing, or are there lights in the tunnel?
I don't think British films are necessarily harder to sell. I think often the advantage of English language, even though I think it can sometimes be a misnomer that actually English sells more positively and more widely, English language. Yeah, I don't think it's potentially tripping it's harder for us. I think in a way it's easier because of the language. But it's such a crowded marketplace. You know, we've seen a number of distributors in the UK, mid-range, like close their doors. This is happening all over the world. Like, there's market consolidation. Streamers aren't buying indie films from indie distribs. You know, they just want their own original content. So, like, you've seen a real kind of split in the market. So you can have certain exceptions like Kneecap, which has sold everywhere. It's getting a 750 screen release in North America. It's amazing. 400 screens in the UK. And then other films which are brilliant, which even may have platforms like Here or Sundance, like, you know, really start their festival life in a really big way, get positive reviews, still really struggle because distributors, you know, they've got to invest in how they find the audience, and that takes a lot of money because it's a crowded marketplace. Like, the UK is really expensive, for instance, so distributors are really quite risk averse, and so we're finding it takes longer and longer to get the films sold, especially in the UK, interestingly, and often the film needs a long life. And, you know, that's not necessarily important to us, but it is to the filmmakers because it can change careers. Ursula was giving examples earlier of that. You know, that international reach can really change the course of someone's career. It's really important. Or ideally that you're recouping some money out of our corridor because the film sells well, and then it goes into your lockbox, and then you can make the next one, which writers, directors, producers all can access. So yeah, I don't think it's particularly harder for us, for our films. It's a tough market.
If I can throw in an advertisement for a panel that's happening on Monday at 11:30 around the international circulation of UK films, where some international distributors will actually talk about the journey of UK films internationally. Perhaps that would be a good place to follow up this conversation as well. It's right here in the pavilion. 11:30, I think, tomorrow. Yeah. Tomorrow is Monday. Oh, my God. Okay.
Hello. I think it was Lee, Ursula, you both mentioned debut features that your funds had backed in the past. And I don't know if I'm wrong about Tornado being a debut. Maybe it's not. Okay.
It's the second feature from John McClane, but we do
Second.
a lot of debuts in Scotland.
Okay, great. So yeah, as a up-and-coming writer-director, you sometimes feel like you need to get a micro-budget feature under your belt to be sometimes trusted with a £1 million, £2 million feature. And it'd be great to just hear the panel's advice, actually, about that, because let's say you do have a 60, 70 grand, super low, one location, but you make a really great, debut feature on not much money. And I've seen a few filmmakers go on that journey of getting their second film being $500,000. So yeah, it'd just be good to know what the journey some of your filmmakers you've worked with who've had their debut features backed, and just general advice on that would be great. Thanks.
Cool. Do you want to go first, or?
That's kind of why we do the first feature, exactly, because, and the example of Bad Day for the Cut, you know, they did that as a calling card to make Boys from County Hell, the feature that they really wanted to make, but that was a 2 million plus film. So yes, financiers would not back a first feature at that, someone who had just done some short films. It does happen. You see people come from commercials to bigger budget features, and we've been involved in those as well, but it is very difficult. So yeah, we do that as the calling card, and it's not cast dependent. It's purely about the story and the visuals, and it is that proof of concept. Here's what I can do on this budget, and then people advance to the higher budget. Ryan and Andy Tohill, who did The Dig, which was also, that was 350,000 is what our first features are, and now with the tax credit increase, it's going to be around 450,000. It's us, a post deal, and the tax credit is the formula for that first feature. Ryan and Andy did The Dig, and now I'm forgetting what else they've done in between, but now they're doing Dalgleish TV series. Shelley Love did Bump Along the Way. She's got several features in development now. Hopefully another one of those will take off soon. Tess McGowan, who wrote that, won a Screenwriters Guild Award in Ireland after that. And she's working on several TV projects now as well. So a lot of the writers, directors and producers are moving into TV maybe next, and then coming back to film. And that kind of it helps keep the credits current, as well as the experience delivering for broadcasters, and it's bread and butter. It's good money working in the TV. It helps keep people running the show, and then they can come back and do the passion projects of the feature. But every year we're seeing that improve. I think Rich Pepiad has a lot of nice offers on the table following Kneecap of the features that we did last year. There's nice offers coming in already on some of the first features that happened last year. So it's hugely important. That's why we do that. And every year no matter what, we just push. It's very intense. It's a small budget, and it's people's first feature, so there's a lot of pressure on it. But for me, it's the most exciting thing that we do. It is the big risk, and it is pushing all the boundaries. And the fact that it's not cast dependent is huge. It's who's the best person for the job, who will deliver what is on the page and elevate it. And so it's very, even though it's a proof of concept for whatever they want to do on a bigger scale, it works in and of itself.
I would just say that it's, it can be challenging sometimes as a public funder, because obviously our role really is to open it up, right? We want more people, but, there are certain individuals that we've supported over a long period of time through their careers. And I don't know if you're sticking around, but there's a talk at 1:30, and as producer John Guillermo will be on. He has got a long history with Film Cymru Wales, right from very, very early stage short films, and he's gone off and he's done different bits of work, slowly building the size of budgets on films that he's working on. And earlier this year in January, the film that we were part of, ended up being a £10 million film with Willem Dafoe and Corey Hawkins, filmed in Wales. He has had an incredible journey, kind of dipping in, doing some shorts, picking up other work, looking to TV as well. It's really difficult to solely have a career in film, particularly in Wales. But there are opportunities in Wales. We have Doctor Who produced in Wales. It's a £2 million an episode budget, right? If you get a gig directing that, suddenly your knowledge of managing a big crew, managing VFX, all these things that you might not pick up in independent film is there for you. So, what we try to do is maintain relationships with people over a period of time. And, something that I'm kind of really keen to do is, produce the research that demonstrates the value of public level, public funding all the way through people's career journeys. So you can almost map where it's vital. But I don't know if that really answers your questions, but I think it's just kind of those incremental roles and jobs that you can work on as you go through.
Hey guys. My name's Ed Rigg, and I just have a question about slightly more commercially minded films. So we have like an MG from a sales agent, cast dependent. We're here trying to close the last 30% of a 2 million budget. And I think maybe have a subconscious understanding that maybe the funds that are public are unlikely maybe, or less likely to support something which is more commercially minded and has sales. And I was just wondering and therefore I haven't applied, or I've applied before a couple of times for things and been unsuccessful. So I was just wondering about views on more commercially minded films.
I'm happy to take that. I mean, I think it's rejection's a horrible feeling, but don't ask, don't get. I would say that I'm sure your unconsciousness is not coming from a place of nowhere, but the idea of a sort of an exciting, well-created genre film, I think, is a really exciting proposition. I run the Scottish Fund, so obviously our first question is, well, who's the filmmaker? What have they done? Are they somebody who's capable of this? So I guess for me, it's a false dichotomy to say that something that has sales, that is cast dependent, is somehow commercial, but something that is, I don't know. Well, I mean, Laura Carrera's film, I think she probably wouldn't mind if one said that, her vision is not especially commercial, but we'll see. But certainly we're in the business of supporting filmmakers' visions, and if they, it's a mass media genre. We'd be thrilled if lots and lots and lots of people went to see it. And I think from a perspective of somebody who's been working a long time on the public side of things, we do see an awful lot of stuff that comes through the door where it's commercial, which I guess is shorthand for a genre. So the first question is, well, if it's a comedy, is it funny? And if it's a horror, is it scary?
Can I jump in on this one as well? So obviously in our fund is focused on minority co-productions, so that you're already a little bit restricted in eligibility, but having a sales agent, sales and a minimum guarantee is a positive in our assessment. And we do have a lot of what would you call genre, thriller, horror elements. We have older skewing female, Miracle Club we supported with Kathy Bates, Laura Linney, which did really well in the box office. So it's less, it's, as Isabel says, it's about the story, the fit, the relevance, and for our fund, it's about also the audience potential, and the commerciality comes into that. So it's not an exclusion; it's actually something we look at.
Yeah, just to add to that, I would just I'm not wild about the language of commercial and art house. I think it's about audience focus. So it's either, is this broad, and who's the audience, and who's the primary and who's the secondary audience, because art house work can be really commercial. So the language doesn't help. I would just speak in audience terms, because that's a better way of framing it, perhaps. And yeah, like our doors are open for everything. You can apply with anything, and everyone can apply. That's the whole point of our fund. It's open access. When we don't work in a commissioning model, so you don't have to know someone or be championed or have been supported by us before. We'll look at absolutely everything, and everything gets evaluated fully. And all of us behave like that. So don't self-select out. We hear this all the time. You don't fund films like this. Well, you don't know unless you try.
Hello. I'm a short white male with not much hair, I guess, 'cause I'm distinctly old. My project, I'm a writer more than anything else. My project concerns a story in which the action takes place partly in rural England and partly on the moon. I'm not expecting much funding from the latter source, but I'm penciled in with a fairly well-established producer. He's produced several films, some of them award-winning, and I think he knows which buttons to push for English funding. Now, this space mission, which is part of the project, it's a European rather than NASA, a European mission, which means I can bring into the storyline. It's fully scripted already, but with adjustments, I can bring in foreign casting, French and German in particular. I'm wondering what would be, with your encyclopedia knowledge of where to look for money, I'm wondering where this particular producer, I won't name him, could best look for funding. The French, well, I live in France, the French are distinctly, no, the word is not xenophobic, but they tend to reserve the money for their own nationals, for French language projects. And insofar as they fund outside France, it's generally what's now called the South, the Third World. So where would be the best place to look for funding, either public or private, in a European context?
Shall I try to take this a little bit, and then the rest can jump in? I think you're asking, probably a question that's in the mind of a lot of people, and the answer is not going to be very straightforward. But with our national lottery hat on, so the international fund, which is also something that's given by UK government to try to encourage connections between producers and to try to introduce UK producers in particular to international financiers. There's a lot of opportunities in festivals and markets such as this one to make connections of that nature or to join a delegation. So the number one step would be to find producers that the UK producer will like to work with, that they'll have a good relationship, that will understand and appreciate your script, because the access to funding will be driven by a number of elements like cast, like location, VFX, and there are elements that can change and move depending on the right balance for the right project. So it's less about how can I access this funding, but what can the partner bring with the funding and with the creative elements to make it appealing for a particular fund. We've had a number of co-productions with France and with Germany, with other European territories, and it's always a negotiation on who brings what and what makes it most suitable for this particular bit of funding. But the number one step is to try to meet the right network that resonates. And for that, we do events in Cannes. We have several lunches where UK producers apply to have a spot, and then they tell us which territories they're interested in, and we arrange for them to meet with financiers and producers. We take delegations of UK producers, and I say UK from all of the UK. So we try to have a balance, to have representation from Scotland, Northern Ireland, from Wales as well, to open up those opportunities. We took a delegation to France last year. They also come to visit London Film Festival. So London Film Festival in the UK is a good opportunity. Sheffield Dogfest for documentaries. So there's spots where a network of international producers regularly attends, and there's a series of events that we try to organize as public funds, all of us, to make those connections happen. So I think the first step is to have them join a mailing list so they know of these opportunities, and then try to find the right fit. But probably you guys want to jump in with more.
Well, if I may, I'd say if Screen International is a very good resource for looking for European co-producers as well. Find a producer that's making a similar kind of project to you, seems to have similar taste to you, and team up with them. That's always a good way forward as well. Yeah, screendaily.com.
Had your hand up for so long.
Yeah, there's someone there.
Okay. Hello? Okay.
No, it's okay. Please, go ahead.
All right, thanks. So my name is Lisa Smith, and I'm from a production company called Patron Films. We're a new company, and we're the first Romani traveller-led production company in the UK, and we were established because we recognised there was a huge underrepresentation of Romani travellers in the film industry and our stories and narratives. So we came together as a collective. We currently have a short film commission going through the Beacons right now, which we're very happy about and proud to be working with you on. But my question is about, I heard the Indigenous language and priorities for this mentioned twice on the panel, and I wanted to ask, how are you balancing this with demands and needs, obviously, to collaborate and tell stories internationally as well?
The balance of representing groups and then international. Well, I suppose it all comes down to story, and it's looking at what stories resonate, and I think looking at stories landing with an international audience. Is it something that they connect with? Is it a universal experience? So yeah, it's the exact same journey really as any other story. It's making sure that it will land with an audience, and there's an audience for it, and it's the human story at the heart of that, and relating to the experience, the human experience. So we are always looking for different angles on the human experience, and what does this bring to an audience? What is the new angle on what it is to feel? So yeah, there's no different route really. Hope that makes sense.
I would just say, sorry, just come in quickly. Yeah, first of all, great that you're being supported by Beacons. So Beacons is a short film fund that we do in collaboration with BBC Wales. And I would just pick up on Ursula's point as well, particularly when we're talking about our Welsh language fund and Indigenous language. It's about the story and making something that will resonate with audiences outside of Wales. So it comes back, I guess Mia mentioned it earlier, it's about what's being put together. It's about facilitating your vision, and it's almost sort of the fact that we're doing Welsh language film is great, but we just want it to be a great film that people want to watch. So, yeah.
I think we've just got time for one more question. I think the lady here, please, she had a hand up a long time.
Hi, hello, sorry, my name is Diola Follerin. I'm a writer-director, and there's sort of two parts to my question. I'm a mother who's returning to the film industry, and I wondered if any of you were doing any kind of funds or events or where you could put us together, writer-directors with producers, and I'm also on the BAFTA Council, and we're trying to look at parents who are returning to work. Sorry, not just mothers, fathers as well, because I know quite a few fathers who've taken time out to look after the kids and then return. So that's part of the question. And yeah, any kind of, are there sort of speed dating between sort of producers and directors and writer-directors, because we can't apply as a writer-director directly to you. And unless, I don't know if there's any kind of development funds or anything like that where we can apply directly, because it's it's a little bit like the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, scenario where, or Wonka rather, where there's no, if you don't have a shop, you can't apply, and that's a real problem for writer-directors like myself, because we want to apply to the funds, but unless we have a producer's shop, we're not allowed to go anywhere near you, and I feel more should be done about that.
That's a legal requirement around lottery.
Okay.
So it's not something we impose. It's it's the bounds of lottery. BFI Network, Early Development Fund, you can now apply. We changed the rules.
Okay.
So you can apply because it's a smaller award as a writer. So I think they just closed not that long ago, but that's in round. So just keep an eye out for that. Are any of our inclusion team here around anything like speed dating that prioritises returning to work? Certainly we have a target across all our funds at BFI for returning to work and people with caring responsibilities. So that's why it's really annoying to fill in those equality monitoring responses when you apply to us, but that's how we then know. If you don't declare, we don't know. But we do have a priority, and we look at it when we assess, and we make sure that we're as much as possible hitting that target. So it is within the frame of reference around our assessment and criteria. Does anyone? Shanida?
I would just add that connector that you're looking for, we are, much of our support program work is around producers, making our work accessible, making ourselves human-sized and accessible. So we often have documentary BFI Doc Society days at festivals like Sheffield Doc Fest. We are supporting a range of new and emerging, but also mid-level producers returning to work through the Producing Truth series that we were doing in partnership with Screen Skills. There will be a cohort at Sheffield Documentary Film Festival. Come to our Doc Day. It's outside, you don't need a pass to attend our Doc Day, we'll all be there. So we create a space for you all to meet and connect and be in community together. But, I totally understand how difficult it is, and I would say that on the BFI Doc Society Fund, our research and development vertical, if you like, of the fund, you don't need a producer to apply. That's early money to help your idea grow from that sort of early idea stage. And then Made of Truth, which is the short documentary part of the fund, you don't need a producer to apply, you can just be a director to apply, and we will work with you to find and connect you with the right producer if you're working in documentary film.
Thank you. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for. Thank you for such great questions. They were very thoughtful and interesting. And thank you very much to our great speakers. I mean, I think that, don't ask, don't get. Don't deselect yourself out, but make it funny, make it good.
Louise, can I just plug, actually, Screen Skills, June 3, there's an online, I think it's across a day, demystifying finance, legals, and IP, and it's online and anyone can come. So just look out for that. It's like a full day and lots of experts. I think several of us are speaking. So there's a lot that will do deep dives into this area.
Fantastic. Yeah, there's, a tremendous amount of resource online about all of this kind of thing. But so,
It's completely understood.
yeah.
Yeah, it's actually why you say emerging, not young. Because absolutely, it's
very much. Right. Well, thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the time.